Here we are, the Walls of Jericho. I've been coming here more years than I have not, spending the night or two. Here's the horse trail, or part of it anyway. Don't have much sunlight left. Maybe 45 minutes before it starts to set. My friends that I've brought here know that I say this is my spot. It just happens to be on public land. Somebody's been camping down there, and that's just a bad idea. Now you see, kiddies, that right there is why it's never a good idea to camp under something like this, especially if you're going to have a fire. They're neat to look at, neat to play in, but I wouldn't want to sleep here. We're going to sleep in some cold weather. Make a Dutch oven pizza because my buddy Joe asked me to. It's not fair to call me a Luddite. I don't fear technology. I just don't prefer it. I think it is a useful tool, but it can also make us lazy. The sun's going down pretty quickly and it's already starting to get really cold. So I'm going to head back to camp, get everything set up, and probably get the fire started, because I do not like to be cold. I've got a small stack. This is some old poplar that's been just sitting out in the woods for a year and a half. It's not very dry, but because we have had a lot of rain here recently, but it burns hot. It burns fast. That's why I've got so much of it. But it does burn hot, and I don't like to be cold. So it's supposed to be close to freezing tonight. That poplar will help keep me warm. And of course, be responsible. Be able to put out your fire when you go completely. Whenever you think you've got enough wood, double it. And if it's going to be cold like it is tonight, triple it. You can never have too much firewood, especially under cold conditions like we'll be having tonight. This is my sleeping quarters for the night. I got my cot and a goose down sleeping bag I got from Stewart's website. He's not a sponsor, but it's a quality product, and if you're interested in this kind of thing, you should have one. It's called the Bug Out 72. Goose down, it's comfort rated for 20 degrees, survival down to 7, but I have been out here before when it was 10 degrees, and I had the same setup I've got right now. The only thing different was I had a wool blanket that I had wrapped around me on the bottom and the top, and I was quite comfortable. As a matter of fact, I had to vent the bag just a few times during the night because I would start to get too hot, and you don't want to sweat when it's cold. As the great Les Stroud once said, you sweat, you die. Most of the time I think he meant that literally, but I think it also works metaphorically. And then a couple of inflatable pillows, one for the head, one for the knees. It is now 45 degrees, which means it's time to get this fire started. I work in a warehouse, so I have easy access to a bunch of broken pieces of pallet. It's made out of pine. It catches fire real great. It's a great fire starter. It doesn't burn very long, but it's a really good fire starter. And speaking of fire starter, this is char cloth. Obviously that's a 9 iron. Well, let me show you the best way to make a fire. Let me show you again. That ground is soaking wet. So is that wood. Here's the best way. That's how you do it. Well, we've got a few minutes before it's time to make the pizza. So let's have a little chat. Yes, I am bundled up a lot. So am I cold right now? No, not next to this fire. Right now it is 43 degrees. Now, if I'm ever fortunate enough to have Grizzly Gaz or Steve Wallis watch this episode, they'll hear me say that and have quite the chuckle. I mean, they routinely go camping when it's 40 below, and it doesn't matter if it's Celsius or Fahrenheit, that's where they meet. But I'll tell you a quick story, and then we'll make the pizza. Prior to a few months ago, I've never even watched YouTube. So why am I starting this channel? A few months ago, I started having this nagging, persistent thought in the back of my head. Like, for 3 weeks, it was ever present. What are you doing to help bring people to Christ? And the real answer to that, of course, was surprisingly little. I've told my wife for years now that outside of a zombie apocalypse, most of my skills and talents are fairly useless. Maybe if you used them this way. So, here we are. And if you've watched this far, thanks for watching. I don't know anything about editing or videography or how to produce a show. Nor do I have any idea what people would be interested in. I'm a fairly boring person. This is what I do. I come out here, I sit next to a fire, and then I sleep without a tent. I've got an app on my phone, and every night it pops up a Bible verse, usually about the time I'm going to work. Usually the last thing I do is read it before I get out of the car and go to work. Well, this particular night, the verse that popped up was Proverbs 16:3. Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established. Well, I don't think an answer gets much more clear than that. This is a learning process. There is a huge learning curve to all of this. I've only got very cheap, crappy equipment right now. The quality's not that great. It's not about getting views or getting subscribers or anything like that. My only intent and hope for this channel is that one day that one person that needs to hear that God loves them hears it. He loves you and he wants a relationship with you. Just start talking to him. 99.9% of what humans argue about is simply how it works. And how it works is important. Yes, I do think we should pursue that knowledge. But ultimately, what is most important is that we believe it was created. All I know is God said, I made that. And it makes sense. How he made it? Well, he didn't give me a blueprint. I agree with C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity when he said, God created science. He likes it. So to me, it only makes sense that he would use science to bring his creation into its full fruition. I'm not insulted by the idea of evolution. I honestly think it's kind of beautiful. But whether or not we climbed down out of the trees or just suddenly appeared one day from the dust of the earth really doesn't matter. What does matter is that I acknowledge the Creator who made it. It's also important that I acknowledge that the Creator cared so much about his creation that he came down here and walked among us and told us, hey, this is how I want you to do things. Oh. So, how about some pizza? We got our ingredients here. Now, they had pizza crust. They even had a thin crust option, but I thought I would try the croissant crust. Let's see what happens there. Of course, pizza sauce, cheese, mushrooms. Love mushrooms. Onion. I didn't want to buy a whole pound of pepperoni, so I just bought a couple of these adult Lunchables, and we'll use that. All right, so we'll start with a crust first. Give that just a little spray of olive oil. You don't have to line the Dutch oven, but having the foil in there does make it easier to deal with once it's cooked. So how does this thing work? There it is. It's a very satisfying sound. Boof. Boof. Give it another little hit of olive oil. Then you got your pizza sauce. So there's a million different kinds of pizza out there. What kind do you like? Leave a note in the comments. And if there's ever anything that you think of that you'd like to see me make, leave that in comments too. I'm open to suggestions if you have any. Then we're going to take some mushrooms. I really like the mushroom. Little onion. I've been with the same woman for over 20 years. I can have all the onion and garlic I want. Cheese, glorious cheese. Ah, it's nice and thick. Let's throw a couple of pieces of white cheddar on there just to see what happens. Yay, cheese! Mmm. Good stuff. Okay. Now, let's cook it. Almost forgot to hit record. Now we'll just let that sit there for a little bit. Very quickly, I just wanted to show you my setup here. Tripod, battery pack, tent light. Making do with what I got. If you're wondering what the hissing sound is, it's the wet wood. Let's see what we got. Now, despite the fact that I've got two perfectly good lid lifters at home, I left them both hanging in the shed. I'm sure future Chris will chastise me for that. What a schlemiel. I picked these up at the grocery store. They'll work. Oh, yeah. Campfire pizza. Now I'm going to eat it. Now let's see how a croissant crust works for this. Oh, it's hot. I believe we're gonna let that rest for a minute. All right, let's try this again. Delicious. I highly encourage you to try this. My croissant crust worked better than I thought. Thank you, Lord, for a good meal. Now, I'm going to eat this. I'll see y'all in a bit. Did get a little overdone in a couple of little spots, but obviously not a deal breaker. Only bones remain. Sorry you weren't here for this one, Joe. That was delicious. By the way, did you ever tell your wife what came through this very campsite when you were up here with me in July? It was also hot enough to make Steve Wallis and Grizzly Gaz spontaneously combust. I do believe now it is time to kick back, relax, listen to a podcast, and then climb into bed. We have officially reached freezing. Throw my nightsticks on there. They'll burn all night long. I'm 49 years old, so of course I'm going to have to get up at 3 a.m. to go pee. But at least here I'll have something warm to stand next to. I've been in the bag only a couple of minutes and it's already pretty toasty in here. I won't have any problem staying asleep tonight. Now, everybody has their own thing that works for them, but what works best for me is to get down to the base layer. That way you're allowing body heat to heat up the inside of the bag and let the bag do its job. If you wear a whole lot of clothes in your bag, you're kind of restricting how much body heat you release. Do what works best for you, of course, but that's how I stay warm. Good night, everybody. That should make Smokey the Bear happy.